Session 2, we always go through our heritage ingredients, which of course is that giant Byoungpool and the Jeju lava energy water. These are key in not only their importance and prevalence in our story, but of course their presence in the formulations and products themselves. So we'll go through each in more depth, and then how we ultimately create our giant Byoungpool leaf extract, which is a marriage between these two raw materials. First, of course, we'll start with that giant Byoungpool. So giant Byoungpool is native to Asia, and it appears in a variety of different historical texts as a regenerating herb, as a fantastic herb not only to consume, but to use in medicine. It has many different names because of these various uses, such as tiger grass, Asiatic pennywort, gotu kola. Specifically with tiger grass, this is one that people always love to hear because it was it was perceived in the wild that when wild tigers would battle, they would instinctively roll around in this foliage to heal their wounds. They innately knew that it would help them repair themselves. And so that's where that name tiger grass came from. It's associated with longevity in Sri Lanka. It was used in Ayurvedic medicine, and it's known as a mind-clearing active or mind-clearing herb. And of course, a lot of this is now proven to be true through science, mainly within cosmetic formulations, in terms of its ability to not only reduce inflammation, but to encourage cell health, collagen synthesis, the list goes on. And so this is where our story began, in understanding the tradition of the giant Byoungpool as a fantastic ingredient, and of course, maximizing on it with science and with current research as well. And so for us to do so, we of course all came together into our smart farm. Our smart farm is that portion of the Ask base, which we went over last week, but this is specifically where we are growing that giant Byoungpool. It's located on the same campus as the Jeju Lava Water Research Center, and it's controlled and monitored by RIMAN for consistent plant growth. Well, now essentially when we created this smart farm, we began to monitor the temperature of the room, the humidity, the soil, the salinity of the soil, how long it took for these leaves to grow to an optimized leaf size, and even at what point should we eventually harvest those leaves. But once we set specific characteristics of the smart farm, the temperature and the soil, we leave these plants alone. And so what happens essentially in these beds, if you can see them over here, that we plant the leaves initially in sand. And there are these tubes running beneath the sand beds that have the Jeju lava energy water. And the plants essentially water themselves via osmotic pressure or osmosis. When they need more water, the water is pulled up from with their roots to nourish the leaves, so to speak. And so we otherwise have this entirely closed off. Of course, scientists will go in there to make sure that everything's operating as normal, but these plants typically are left for their 2-month growth period before we eventually harvest them. Now, in this smart farm, there are 62 individual long beds like you see in this picture, and it's 150,000 square feet, or roughly around 15,000 square meters. There's also a neighboring research center where we compare our giant Byoungpool and the standard Byoungpool, continuing to see the differences between these two leaf varieties and also the phytonutrients that each leaves contain. Now, this person in the left-hand corner is actually Dr. Saw. He's the head of the Byoungpool Institute, and he actually taught me firsthand the variety of different controls we initially placed within the smart farm, the various different ways in which we utilize the smart farm to enhance our own understanding of the giant Byoungpool. And with his involvement and his expertise, we of course are the first company that is going to be vertically integrated in the controlled growth of Byoungpool. And this is something that is fantastic to boast, not only because we are using this ingredient so relevantly in our products, but we are the ones sourcing this ingredient. We are responsible for that growth. And so part of the way in which we created such a unique smart farm, one that is so independent, is through Mr. On's or Chairman On's visitation to Priva in the Netherlands. Now, Priva is a specific company that specializes in smart farm technology. And in his understanding after that visit, we began to maximize the smart farm into what it is today. This, of course, all maximizes the concept of that giant Byoungpool, which is our patented ingredient. Chairman On, in all his dedication to the growth of Centella asiatica with enhanced benefits, created a new strain of Byoungpool. And so as you can see here, this is our plant patent, and right here, title holder, Ask Company. That's Chairman On's company. And we hold this plant patent for 20 years until 2042. With that in mind, that allows us not only to exclusively grow this giant Byoungpool, but to be the only ones utilizing it in formulation. And as we go in a bit more detail in the next couple of slides, it's mainly known as Centella asiatica. That is what you will see in your ingredient list on your products. And while it has many other different names, and you may hear it spoken as Byoungpool, Centella asiatica is how it is identified in the research realm. And so we technically have giant Centella asiatica. At its core, it is beautiful for sensitive skin types. And I like to appreciate sensitive skin as that most vulnerable baseline skin type, such that it can also offer benefits to more robust skin types, such as combination, oily, normal, etc. And so some of the benefits that Centella asiatica has for the skin include soothing and calming irritated skin, providing hydration, and even reinforcing the skin barrier. But again, that is true for any Centella asiatica, which is quite common in the beauty industry, even outside K-beauty. So in our ascertaining of a new plant strain, we create a couple of different benefits that we are able to boast that, again, other companies cannot. One key thing to note about our growth of this giant Byoungpool in that smart farm setting is that we are able to utilize these leaves in their fresh form. They are never dried. Many companies will dry the standard Byoungpool to lower the cost of shipping of this raw material. But in doing so, you remove a lot of water-soluble components that are beneficial to the human body, such as water-soluble vitamins. We are able to control the exact moment where we pick these leaves to bring them to extraction for inclusion into finished goods. And that allows us also to maximize the types of phytonutrients present in these leaves that are also included in those finished goods as well. And so in this picture here, you can see the Madagascar and Indonesian sources of standard Byoungpool, our giant Byoungpool packed away tightly in its fresh form. And that's what you can visualize when we are bringing these leaves to our large extraction vats, is those fresh green phytonutrients all packed together in leaves that are 3 to 4 times larger. Now, with that all in mind, because the leaves are larger, as you can see here, we have higher polyphenol contents within these leaves, and that directly correlates to greater antioxidant activity. But because we are so passionate about research, you may remember last week that one branch of research of Ask Labs, our research entity, is specifically focused on giant Byoungpool. It's our Byoungpool Research Institute. And so they collaborated with universities in Seoul to see what else this giant Byoungpool could do in comparison to standard Byoungpool. And we found that it has a significant anti-wrinkle effect, as well as the ability to reduce hyperpigmentation. And this is entirely based within the phytonutrients of the leaves, no additional additives or in mixture with other performing ingredients. It's just the benefits of these giant Byoungpool leaves themselves, which again are 3 to 4 times larger, as you can see here. And so now when we get really deep into the science of these phytonutrients, what I keep mentioning, there are a couple of key components that are really what are performing within the giant Byoungpool extract. We have a variety of different vitamins and minerals, nutrients that your skin needs, but there are a key amount of triterpenes or triterpenoids, which are benefiting your skin. And so some of them are listed here: madecassoside, madecassic acid, asiatic acid, and asiaticoside, alongside, of course, those polyphenols that I had mentioned. And so the saponins specifically are anything that ends in -oside, so madecassoside or asiaticoside. And then the triterpenes are madecassic acid and asiatic acid. You do not need to know the difference between these. I cannot imagine you'll be going to a K-pop up and explaining madecassoside and madecassic acid, but just for your understanding of what's really going on at the molecular level, the presence of these specific molecules are what are benefiting your skin. Asiatic acid, for example, has shown clinically to stimulate your fibroblast cells. These are your cell types that actually synthesize collagen and elastin, which ultimately helps skin structural integrity. Madecassic acid is well known for its soothing properties. Asiaticoside is robust as not only a healing agent, but as an antioxidant. And even madecassoside, while also being an antioxidant, also has anti-inflammatory benefits. So these variety of different phytonutrients have overlapping benefits that are also maximized when they are working together in formulation. You may have a serum that solely calls out madecassoside or solely is an asiatic acid serum, and you get the benefits from that phytonutrient, but you're missing the synergy that can occur when you have the whole plant component. For example, when used in a mix with asiaticoside, asiatic acid, and madecassoside, madecassic acid specifically can help promote the creation of hyaluronic acid in the skin. Now, I'm sure you all are familiar with hyaluronic acid as a raw material ingredient in formulation, but it is made by your body naturally. And so having the combination of all of these even encourages skin hydration, which is one of the benefits I had mentioned on that slide previously. And so having all of these together in abundance greatly promotes not only antioxidant care and anti-inflammatory care, but hydration and barrier maintenance as well. And of course, last but not least, the polyphenols themselves are further coming in to provide antioxidant protection. When we go more into skin physiology next week, you'll see how important antioxidants are. Antioxidants and the protection against reactive oxygen species can help you directly have agency in the reduction of the appearance of a variety of different skin concerns, like fine lines and wrinkles, like hyperpigmentation or permanent redness. And so antioxidant care, you cannot have enough of it. And so realistically here, we have a robust profile of a variety of different phytonutrients. Now, more recently, in our use of giant Byoungpool, after we reformulated and relaunched the dermatology line, we have positioned Byoungpool in a whole new light, and that's specifically with our giant Byoungpool 3 solution. Now, this giant Byoungpool 3 solution is prioritized in the booster and the serum of the Dermatology First package and the Dermatology cream. Many other products in ICD Skin, as well as even in the lightening supplements and in Bodolab, have that Centella asiatica leaves extract, but it's not this specific Byoungpool 3 solution. This Byoungpool 3 solution is made entirely from that giant Byoungpool and is based within the research that was done at the Smart Farm. Now, not only do we still have that giant Byoungpool leaf extract, but we've maximized its antioxidant efficacy by specifically 34.5%. So it's more robust in your skin lipid protection. There's also now twice the reduction in MMP1 activity. MMP1 stands for matrix metalloproteinase. It's specifically an enzyme that breaks down collagen and elastin for reorganization. However, if you come into UV overexposure and you create reactive oxygen species in your skin cell environment, they can permanently turn on MMP1 to break down collagen and elastin that your skin needed, that it needed for structural support. And so to have a reduction in MMP1 activity means a direct correlation to the maintenance of your collagen stores and ultimately to the look of more youthful skin. Furthermore, now beyond that giant Byoungpool leaf extract, we now have those giant Byoungpool leaf exosomes. We specifically have called them incelsomes, entirely derived from our own giant Centella asiatica. This enhances the absorption of the ingredients within the booster serum and dermatology cream, but it also enforces, or rather reinforces, your skin lipids because these specific molecules are made with a phospholipid bilayer. We'll go more in detail on the structure of these exosomes and how they can benefit the skin again next week, but this is another highlight to the giant Byoungpool that is entirely our own. And last but certainly not least, in that giant Byoungpool 3 solution, we also boast giant Byoungpool amino acids. Amino acids are essentially the building blocks that form proteins. And of course, we innately have many different amino acids, as does many other protein essences, so to speak. So anything with proteins is going to have amino acids. But specifically with the giant Byoungpool amino acids, they come in for a variety of different benefits to the skin, furthering antioxidant activity, anti-inflammatory care, but also helping in even skin moisturization. And so in all of this, in our research of giant Byoungpool and in our understanding of it, we are able to maximize the extracts we are pulling from it, which is our responsibility as the sole user and grower of giant Byoungpool. Now, to sum our specific portion on that giant Byoungpool, I wanted to point out some of that giant Byoungpool research that I had mentioned. So there are many, many papers that exist on Centella asiatica, and I invite you to read them in more detail because many of the benefits or positives that are found in those papers can apply to giant Byoungpool. But because we are specifically talking about giant Byoungpool, I wanted to keep the papers I'm referencing to reference giant Byoungpool solely. And so that top paper here is specifically the comparison of the growth characteristics and the physiological activity of the two different strains of the standard Centella asiatica, standard Byoungpool, and our giant Byoungpool. And this is a readily available title if you wish to look up this research paper, but it's interesting to see the science behind that giant Byoungpool, to have it established within the research realm. And as I also mentioned a couple slides back, we did some studies with various universities in Seoul to see what else that giant Byoungpool could do over standard Byoungpool. And so here are some of the results from those studies with Seoul National University, Jeonbuk National University, and Suwon Science College. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But with Seoul National University, that's where we found the anti-wrinkle effect and the reduction in MMP1 activity. We furthermore found its brightening potential in that same study with Seoul University. With Jeonbuk, we found its ability to reduce inflammation, which again was already a characteristic of Centella asiatica, but it's more robust in the giant Byoungpool. And lastly, and interestingly, with Suwon Science College, we actually looked towards the fermented byproduct of giant Byoungpool and how that can be applied to balance the skin and the body's microbiome. So this is only the beginning and the continuation of our exploration into giant Byoungpool. Because we have an entire entity dedicated to research on this heritage ingredient, we are only continuing its look into novel derivatives and into understanding how we can maximize giant Byoungpool. Now, of course, that second heritage ingredient is the Jeju Lava Energy Water itself. And before we go more in detail on the history of the Jeju Lava Energy Water, I want to point out how important water is in formulation. As many of you may remember, I'm a cosmetic chemist myself. And so we would always start our formulas in the lab with a big vat of water. We put it on our mixer and we would start adding other things in, of course, unless it was an anhydrous formulation. But with your formulas, they can be upwards of 80% distilled or deionized water. And that's especially true for any of those bigger fill bottles that you might find at the drugstore, shampoos or body washes, where you need a cost-effective product that maybe is $10, $15, but you get a good amount of it. A majority of that formula is going to be water. Add a little bit of thickeners and some key performing ingredients, and you have a robust body wash or a shampoo. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But in understanding water's status as a universal solvent and it having no benefit to the human skin, we wanted to look how we can maximize even the most basic line of formulation. And that's when we turn to Jeju Lava Energy Water. So Jeju lava energy water is all based within Halasan Mountain, or Halasan specifically. Apparently, Halasan has mountain in the name, so when you say it, you're just saying mountain. But anyways, so Halasan formed roughly 400,000 years ago on Jeju Island, and beneath this volcano was, of course, volcanic bedrock. And the surrounding seawater began to filter through this volcanic bedrock and was being freed of any heavy metals or impurities, and actually picking up essential minerals from this rock, such that this aqueous resource has tested benefits in skin hydration. What's important about the utilization of Jeju lava energy water is that it's a stable water resource. It maintains salt, pH, and temperature levels nearly year-round, and that's crucial to maintain responsibility in formulation realistically. You don't want to use a varied ingredient that could potentially ruin a formula or even cause lack of safety to that formula. This is also the only quality location realistically for this type of resource, for having lava water. There are other locations that have this type of magma water or lava water, such as in Hawaii, Spain, and Japan, but none of those locations are as accessible or as pure and stable in terms of utilization for human use. With the appreciation of Jeju lava energy water as a stable resource, we can see both its mineral composition and its lack of fluctuation year-round in these graphs here. So on the top right-hand side, you can see the variety of different minerals present within the Jeju lava energy water. Of course, we have salt in a very high concentration that is filtered out. There's a desalination process before we, of course, include this into the products, but there's magnesium, calcium, potassium, silicon, selenium, zinc, all these fantastic for skin benefits as essential minerals. And as I mentioned, there's really no fluctuation in this resource. The lava water specifically is this pink line here. And as you can see in both temperature, salt content, and in pH, it very rarely varies throughout the year from month 0 all the way to month 12. So this is important for us to continuously monitor, and that's what we do in partnership with the Jeju Lava Water Research Center. They help us not only sustainably remove any saltwater content from this aqueous resource, but they also help us monitor this resource so that it continues to promise that lack of variation, so that we can continue to promise the RIMAN difference in our products. And similarly with Jeju lava energy water, there's also science to back some of its benefits for the skin. And one of the ones I mention most often is that skin hydration potential. So this specific study looked towards the benefits of specifically triggering aquaporins. So aquaporins are molecules within the skin that help skin hydration, to put it simplistically. And so it was found that Jeju lava seawater was able to encourage aquaporin formation. However, other studies also suggest that it actually has the ability to reduce hyperpigmentation. Specifically in this study here, it inhibits alpha MSH-induced melanogenesis. Very long term, you do not need to know that, but basically it inhibits a portion of the melanogenesis pathway, or the pathway in which melanin is created and deposited in the skin. And so many other performance ingredients in skincare that address hyperpigmentation will have some effect within the melanogenesis pathway to stop that pigmentation from occurring. And so this aqueous resource proved that via a specific channel within the melanogenesis pathway. Again, you will hear that term again next week when we go through skin physiology as well. And the last, just something to include, although it was a study done on mice, but they actually fed mice the Jeju lava energy water, and it found that it helped improve lipid metabolism, so essentially fat burning in these mice. By no means should you be drinking the Jeju lava energy water unless it has been purified and bottled for you, but it's unique to see that as well. And so all this is to say that, again, as a universal solvent, deionized and distilled water has no benefits to the skin. Jeju lava energy water not only has that story to be told, not only has the beauty in its sourcing and the responsible governmental sourcing at that with the Jeju Lava Research Center, but it even has the science to back its benefits for our skin. And so all of this comes together into the creation of our Byoungpool leaf water. And so our Byoungpool leaf water, or our giant Byoungpool leaf extract, is this synergy between our giant Byoungpool leaves and, of course, the Jeju lava energy water. And what's important to know is that our giant Byoungpool leaves are already grown in the Jeju lava energy water. The synergistic benefit that comes from that produces those leaves that are 3 to 4 times larger. That's how we've created giant Byoungpool. But of course, once they're grown, the Jeju lava energy water still comes into play in formulation and raw material attainment. And so it's a very lengthy process, and it's one we take extremely seriously because we are producing this raw material ourselves. We can't turn around and blame a raw material supplier if there's a faulty batch or if there's an error that goes wrong. We want to make sure we are consistently producing this extract with not only the highest efficacy and a maintained efficacy, but the highest safety as well. And so when we pick those leaves, I believe it's roughly 60 to 80 days after growth, they go through 2 complete rounds of cleaning with all the traditional wash you would use for even fruits and vegetables to really remove any potential for contamination. Before packaging, and while this is also going on, we're we're also cleaning the containers that the giant Byoungpool extract will go into. Once those leaves have been cleaned, there's a timed sterilization that removes any microbes, anything we can't see with the human eye, and then we go through that extraction process. It's at a very specific heat-controlled environment, and we put those leaves inside a big vat with all the Jeju lava energy water, and we start bubbling it, and we get all those phytonutrients pulled into solution. After that, we then filter and transfer it, and so we remove the pulp of the giant Byoungpool leaves, so to speak, and we just have that enriched aqueous resource now with the phytonutrients in solution. We then move that to quality control. Excuse me, I missed a step. We do antibacterial processing to make sure it is void and free of any microbial species, bacteria, yeast, mold, or fungi. We then go into that packaging in those already cleaned big vats, and then we do another inspection and quality control. And at that quality control, we check pH, we check the conductivity, which helps us determine the mineral content within the water. We also do refractometry, which checks the purity of specifically non-bacterial contaminants. So if there's any dirt that somehow made it into the extract or any unknown substance or impurity, we're going to catch it through that refractometry. And that completes the creation of that giant Byoungpool. We then ship it off to ultimately be included into our finished goods that you know and love today. And so 15 tons of giant Byoungpool produces enough extract for 1 million products in all of this. So this really is creating the RIMAN difference from the very base, from the growth of the raw material. And with that, that concludes our discussion for today. And so again, we have an outline for you if you wish to scan the QR code. Also, we are dropping that outline in the chat as well. The link, it's in the drive. And yeah, I hope this, continued your appreciation of both giant Byoungpool, Jeju lava energy water, but also of RIMAN's commitment to creating that difference. And we're doing so at a variety of different steps within formulation and product development. And I think it is very robust to do so at the point of raw material selection. As a previous raw material supplier myself, raw materials are a very intimate area in the selection of them. You can have 10 different suppliers all selling the same raw material, all having different profiles on them, all having different safety profiles. So to have it close to home for our key ingredients is crucial, realistically. All right. And so as I mentioned a couple of times this discussion, next week's topic, is skin physiology and RIMAN. So we'll start the conversation with going through the 3 layers of the skin, the main components within each of those layers. It's a very science-forward discussion, but I hope it helps you understand your own skincare, if anything.